Protection. Once a spreadsheet is designed, we want to make sure we don't accidentally type over any of our entries. When you're using protection, it's important to understand that by default, Excel has all cells locked. So here when I go to the Review tab and I go through the ribbon to Protect Sheet, when I say OK, all the cells will be locked by default. It does not matter whether I am on actual blank cell or a cell with numbers. That's the default, which is to have everything protected. I'm going to unprotect the sheet. What is essential for us to do is that when we want to turn on protection onto a sheet, first we must go ahead and unlock the cells that we want to let a user truly type into. To do this, I'm going to go to Home. Under Home, I'm going to go to Font. Under Font, to the Protection tab. See how it says Locked? I'm going to remove the check mark from Locked. I'm under Format Cells. Going to Font and the dialog box is not the only way to get here. I can also go to Alignment, Number, and Cells. Each of these areas will associate to the same information. I select Font, as that's what I want to consider to be the default for the dialog box. I just simply want to highlight that there's always many ways to get to the same place. Here I'm removing the check mark. I click OK. Those cells are now unlocked. Now when I go back to Review, Protect Sheet and say OK, I still cannot type in the areas that are locked. However, if I go to February and change the number now, it will accept it. When you're working with protection in another item of interest, it's suggested that you consider highlighting the areas that the user is going to type into rather than highlighting your totals. For example, under Home, I'm going to go and select my sales information. I'd like to turn on some color coding. But see, it's all grayed out. I have protection turned on. Once protection is turned on, I'm restricted to what I can do. I'll go to Review and I'll unprotect. When it's unprotected and I go home, my commands are back. Now I'll go to the background, choose a color, deselect so that you can see how it looks. The concept here is that if I'm typing in data, it's easier for me to go to the colored areas because it's a natural component for us to think in terms of. I can always go to the remaining items and put on slightly different shading. But the idea is that while going through your spreadsheet, it allows the user to know where they should be typing. Consider designs that let you to put some coloring darker so that it goes right into the user's natural patterns. I know exactly where to go because it's the darker color. We can copy this over to a second sheet. I have one for data input and one for print. I'd also like you to think of that when you do go into the protection that you have the ability to turn on a password. I choose not to put a password on just for the purpose of this instance. I wanted you to see what would happen, but notice that I could have allowed you to format the cells if I wanted to. Remember when we were locked out of formatting? Had I put a check mark here, you would have been able to format those cells. When you're working with protection, you have a great deal of flexibility of what you can choose to turn on and turn off. It's a particularly great characteristic. Also, right underneath our protection of a sheet is the protection of a workbook. Just like we protect a spreadsheet, I can do the same thing for multiple sheets within the workbook. So protection can be added to the workbook or to the worksheet.